Hello, I'm Peter Westbrook, and my interest is the future, in understanding the future. And there could be no more important time for such an understanding, because all of those who are engaged in the study of the future, we call them futurists, futurologists, whatever, all appear to be agreed that we are at a critical moment in our history, and that the choices we are going to make now, not even a few years from now, but right now, are going to determine, of course, what kind of future we have, but more important, whether we have a future on planet Earth. This was best described by one of the greatest futurists of all time, who in a book he wrote in the 70s described our choice as between utopia and oblivion. And this is basically what we're facing. People became aware of this back in the 70s with a series of important meetings and publications. The Club of Rome bringing our awareness to the problems of what they call the world mega problem, actually, the problems of overpopulation, resource depletion, and pollution, with a significant study from Stanford Research Institute, where they projected 40 future histories to the year 2050 and found that 38 of them were completely unacceptable. And the only one that we would want to embrace required a fundamental change in our understanding of ourselves and of the world. At the same time, this is when Buckminster Fuller's book came out, and at the same period of time, a whole focus of interest was brought about to what the future held and what these problems were that were about to overwhelm us. Well, one example from the highest level was the Secretary General of the United Nations, U Thant, who made a statement that he thought the members of the United Nations had about 10 years to settle their old differences and work together to solve these problems before they became too big, too unmanageable. Many years have passed since then, and we have to hope that the 10-year assessment was overdramatic, perhaps, although Buckminster Fuller himself said around that time that mankind was taking a 10-year final examination on a strictly pass-fail basis. Now, today, this whole area of interest has come up again. So on the one hand, wonderful technologies that have made enormous contributions to mankind, but on the other hand, a deepening sense that the world that we have learned about, the world that has been revealed to us, has something more going for it than we have been able to fathom thus far. And unless we get to these deepest levels of understanding, unless we break through to a level of maturity as a race, that we simply will not get beyond what Carl Sagan referred to as technological adolescence. The key is that with all the thousands of words that are being written and spoken, most of it does not get to the point. The point is that, as Albert Einstein stated, the solution to the problems cannot be found with the same level of thinking that caused the problems. The solution to the problem is not on the level of the problem. So how do we go to a deeper level in order to find these solutions? The key comes in the realization that has occurred recently that what future studies really deals with is not so much technology and demographics and space travel and all these things that many people associate with future studies. But if we cite the definition of future studies from Wikipedia, it is the study of potential possible future outcomes and the worldviews and mythology that underlie them. Future studies has to do with mythology? Absolutely, because it is the deepest level of thought. the deepest level that forms the very way in which we see the world, that shapes our understanding of everything. And if it has become obsolete, as the Stanford group back in the 1970s suggested, they suggested it has become pathogenic, then to try to go forward into the future with the same understanding of the world that we have currently would be like trying to enter the scientific age with a medieval viewpoint. It simply doesn't work. That is why so many great minds have all come out and declared that this is a critical moment. And yet, still the issue, it seems to me, has to be at the deepest possible level. What is that level? Well, one of the members of that Stanford study was Joseph Campbell, the great expert on mythology. And he once described what the basic story of humanity that all of mythology speaks of, contributes to. One basic fundamental process. That mankind was once at one with the world, that we have lost that connection, and that we have to re-establish it. Not by going back, but by going to a higher level of integration, a higher level of consciousness. And here we come to, suddenly, all that literature which speaks of enlightenment and fulfillment, and so many different terms, most of which is found not in Western psychology, which limits itself terribly to the understanding of pathology and how that can inhibit the growth to maturity, but to Eastern psychologies, which we have not embraced fully, which describe higher states of consciousness. And yet there is fundamental work being done now which constitutes a breakthrough. Understanding of what consciousness is now being sought by the greatest scientific minds. Understanding of what the brain contributes to all our experience and the unique state of coherence and integration that is observed in people who are experiencing higher states of consciousness. This is so important because it takes ideas of enlightenment and so forth out of the realm of the mystical into the realm of what is scientifically graspable. If we can grab hold of this knowledge, apply it, develop it to the point where it enters the mainstream of our education, then this could be the critical knowledge that we need to pass this all-important final exam that was spoken about by Buckminster Fuller. It was in fact Buckminster Fuller who inspired this whole line of thinking for me over the last 30 years. I was working with him in Seattle, as it happens, and we went to a bookstore. He said, I have to go sign some books. Fine, I went with him. We were chatting. And suddenly the manager of the bookstore came and said, look at all these books about the future, Bucky. They're all so negative. Why are people so negative about the future? And Bucky said, without a second's hesitation, he said, to be negative about the future, we don't have to know anything. To be positive about the future, we have to know a great deal. So this is what I have devoted myself to. This is what my writing, hopefully later documentary films and so forth, is all about. The knowledge we need to be positive about the future and the knowledge we need to pass this all-important final exam. Buckminster Fuller.